Hello, I'm Mila Kumpalova. I am a senior reporter at Chalkbeat here in Chicago. Welcome to the inaugural school board debate forums. These are conversations with people who are running in Chicago's historic first school board elections. Welcome to everyone tuning in live on our YouTube channel. If you have questions for the candidates, please type them into the comments and we will do our best to get to them at the end of the forum. I am very happy to welcome the candidates for District 10. We'll start out by introducing them briefly. Next to me, we have the Reverend Robert Jones. He is a pastor at Bronzeville's Mount Carmel Missionary Baptist Church. He took part in a 34-day hunger strike to keep Dyett High School open in 2015. He is an elected school board advocate and a father of four, and a native of East St. Louis. He has also served as a community representative on the Dunbar High School Local School Council. Then we have Adam Parrott-Sheffer. He's an education consultant and former CPS principal. He's led Mary Gage Peterson Elementary in the early 2010s and now serves as an adjunct lecturer at Harvard University. He's also an author and a CPS parent volunteer. And he was the first person citywide to declare his candidacy for a school board. Che Brimefest-Smith is an award-winning songwriter, rapper, and community activist. He is a Southside native married to a teacher. He won a Grammy, Golden Globe, and an Academy Award for a song he created with Common and John Legend for the movie Selma. And he is also a former Pritzker Fellow at the University of Chicago. We have joining us via live stream Karen Norrington Reeves. She is a nonprofit CEO, former attorney, and a former workforce development leader who has said that her experience as a former CPS student and a parent of a student with disabilities navigating the school district informed her decision to join the race. We are also expecting the writing candidate in District 10, Rosita Chitonda, to join us a little bit later. She is a former longtime CPS teacher and Chicago Teachers Union organizer who says that she entered the race because she wants to hold both the district and the union more accountable. So thank you again for joining us. We will start with just an easy icebreaker question, starting with you, Reverend Jones. What was your favorite and least favorite subject in school?
Well, my favorite subject was history, and I liked it because it talked about the things that people were doing in the past. I was always intrigued with those things and how they operated and what they did, things of that sort. I thought those things were quite interesting and intriguing for me. They were good. My least favorite was geometry. Not because of the equations, but because of the drawing of the angles and the using of the instruments. I just was just something I just really just didn't go over well with me.
Thank you. You guys don't mind if I use your first names from here on out?
Please do.
Okay. Adam, what was your favorite and least favorite subject?
Yeah, so it was my high school history teachers that were why I became a teacher. These were classes where they took history, made it real, we did role playing, we did games. They really made us wrestle with what historical folks did. And I was hooked, right? The idea that you could get a group of young people this excited about stuff that so oftentimes is dry, right? There's a book about like why I hate history. And yet these are folks who didn't do that. For me, on the other end of that was chemistry. And I remember high school chemistry, and the teacher was mean. The teacher yelled at us, berated kids in class. And because of that, it wasn't a place where I wanted to learn. It was a place that I checked out. It was one of those courses that was why I almost didn't graduate high school because it wasn't pleasant. And so for me, that's why this sort of work is so important, because it's so rarely about the content. It's about the adults who are creating that community and how different that can be based upon who's doing it.
Jay?
So my favorite subject was science. I really enjoyed cause and effect, environmentalism, why things were happening in nature and all around us, and the facts of why they were happening as best we know. It's very interesting.
Answer to that,
So
PS CEO.
I would like to see the criteria of education, business, finance, community collaboration, but more than anything, I think one of the things we leave out, we talk about all these, yes, they have to have vision, but they have to have a good character. And we have to begin to evaluate the characters of people that we are choosing to be our district leaders, because you can have all the qualifications in the world, and I'm going to bring this up time and time again. Barbara Byrd Bennett was able to steal $23 million and get 7 board members to go along with her. So character, for me, would be the most important quality.
And Robert?
Yes, well, I think that first they must have a foundation that's connected with education. They must have a heart for what it's going to take to run something as large as a school district.
Recording in
CPS,
progress.
Okay, as well as leadership skills and being able to collaborate, being able to mix it up and connect with all of those individuals that they're going to need to work with in order to make things happen.
Thank you. Hello again, Karen. Sorry we lost you there for a bit.
that's okay.
So
I
the
don't know what you
question,
heard of my answer.
we can get you caught up. So the 2 questions for you are, would you keep CPS CEO Pedro Martinez in his position? And what are the qualities or experiences that you would like to see in a CPS CEO?
I would keep him in his position, yes, because I feel like the move to oust him is not rooted in the reality of his performance. It's not based on any evidence. It's not based on an actual evaluation. If that is the case, then I'd like to see that and like for that made plain. In terms of what I'd like to see in a CEO, I really do believe that we need folks who have some education experience. And in recent years, we've seen folks who have not been in a classroom, who don't understand what it means to be a teacher, who have not been principals, who haven't been teacher leaders and administrators. I do think that that experience is valuable. But it's also valuable to have someone who understands how to manage the budget, who understands how to manage staff, who can navigate some of the governmental and political realities, and someone who actually has a heart and a passion for kids. I mean, that should be first and foremost. But they also have to understand sort of the Byzantine machine that really is the public school system.
Thank you.
And I also want them to get along well with folks and have good interpersonal communication skills and understand what relationships, the value of relationships.
Thank you, Karen. Rosita, hello. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
I'm glad you were able to make it. So the first couple of questions that you missed but can get to answer now are, would you keep CEO Pedro Martinez in his job? And what are qualifications or experiences that you would like to see in a CPS CEO?
Well, I have a unique perspective on this because I'm the founder of Cause Teachers. And one of the issues we had with Pedro is the stringent do not hire policy that he implemented when he came in. And that policy costs many very good educators to be on like a professional, what we call death sentence. So I would say no, and that's on a personal level, because we need people that understand that when people go into this profession as education, it is really a profession. And when you have so many great educators that are not able to participate and have got masters and PhDs in the area and that are stuck. So for me personally, and I guess it would be kind of personal thing, I would say no. As far as the budget, and I don't have a problem with that aspect of it. And if it weren't for the issues that I'm talking about, I may say keep him. But at this point, I cannot say that.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the budget, and of course, others mentioned that as well, because I have a few questions about the budget for you coming up next. And for this next one, you can take 2 minutes to answer it, and we'll start with Che this time. As you guys, I'm sure know, in its most recent budget, CPS projected deficits of at least $500 million a year for the coming 4 years. And that's, of course, without accounting for the costs of teachers and principals' contracts that the district is currently negotiating. So talk to me a little bit about how you would address these deficits and balance the district's budget.
Yeah, so, my platform is BCP, budget, curriculum, personnel. We have to deal with the budget first. I always say this, Dr. King said that a budget is a moral document. A budget tells you what the values and principles of the community is. What we've been seeing in the waste of the budget that we have now while we're overextended, we have tablets that we purchased for millions of dollars during COVID, but we don't know where those tablets are. We put tracking systems on those tablets. We can't activate the tracking system. There's a lot of waste in our budget that needs to be found and needs to be shored up and cut. There are a lot of community assets that we are not taking advantage of that can supplement what we use in budget. So I just believe that we need to utilize all of our tools in the community to get the children the best education they can have at the lowest price, but the best quality. We're giving people contracts without other companies being able to even bid on the contract. So there are some companies that CPS is funding that we don't even know what the option is. So, I believe the opportunity we have with an elected school board is that we're going to be more diligent about who we sign contracts over to and how we deal with the budget.
Thank you. Rosita, could you address that next? How would you balance the budget?
Well, being a career teacher working for CPS and actually being in there to visualize what's going on, at the area offices, I think it's a complete waste. I would eliminate the area offices to the extent. And I say that because a lot of the people that work there are experts, so to speak. And I think our experts, in view of the fact that 85% of Black children and our other children are failing on standardized tests, we need our best teachers in our classrooms. So if you have this gift and you're at the area office and your job, and I did work at the area office, so I know, your job is to come in and help teachers. But instead, you come in with a clipboard and sit in the back of the room and write them up. That is not a great resource for money. I think that we need to evaluate our area positions. And I think that if we do that, we could cut a lot of the fat.
Karen, can you address this question next?
Yes, thank you. So I think you're absolutely right that the budget deficit is going to be significantly higher than what has been discussed. There are a number of ways to balance a budget, but everyone seems to talk about increasing the revenue, and not enough attention, I think, is being paid to decreasing the expenditures. And so one of the ways that we get to that is by having a forensic audit. When elected, I will call for a forensic audit to look at where are we spending our dollars, what are the trends, where can we cut fat. I think procurement is always a go-to area, and I have expertise in that, given that I managed about $500 million and had to do federal federally approved procurement in order to manage those funds. I think the other space for us is ensuring that we have corporate public-private partnerships. I would like to see every single school have a corporate partner that invests in the school, invests not only time and not only money, but energy with respect to their employees coming in to do volunteer projects. We have a lot of initiatives where employers come out and will, paint, do murals on walls. I led a program where we had staff from different companies throughout the city come in and actually be reading partners and do volunteer work with our kids. But if they're making that investment in each of those schools, it will help to drive down some of the costs. But we have to first start with ensuring that our expenditures are actually reasonable, necessary, allowable, and that we're not just focused on fat.
Thank you. Robert?
It becomes important for us to understand, of course, when we look at the budget, that we do need to audit it, and we need to see what the numbers actually are. And we must be prepared to make tough decisions as it relates to the expenditures at every level. And that's just the business of what we need to do. I agree with the truths that have been mentioned by many of my colleagues here today as it relates to making sure that we establish partnerships. There are corporations, there are allies in our community, in this country, that would partner with our schools and enable us to do some of the things that are necessary for us to do. But when we talk about the budget, true enough, while we just can't print up any money, we want to make absolutely sure when we do an audit, we find out where we need to make real cuts and make them.
And Adam?
So school district budgets are not talking about people is $1 billion. $500 million is half of that. So what we're talking about, everything that's come up so far, can't do that. You can't cut half of the non-personnel costs without destroying the system. So we're gonna have to look beyond that if we're really gonna make this happen. Right now, we have folks in finance and CPS who are doing phenomenal work, reducing the number of things that are paid through contract and consultants and bringing it in-house, which is a significant cost savings. There's probably another about 40 million if you're really tight on cutting out a central office. At that point, we have to start looking at where are the opportunities and where can we actually build a coalition around it, right? We talk about asking for money from Springfield, we talk about asking for money from the city. To do that, I think we have to do all these hard things on our own first, and then actually have some legitimacy to say that there might be some way to bridge some of these pieces. And then we have to think about what's non-essential to the core, right? So if you know anything about teaching and learning, the only things that matter are the things that touch the relationship between teachers, students, and the curriculum. And so we need to take a steely-eyed look at what are those things that are actually having an influence on those relationships. And maybe some of our things like these new MTSS positions, we're not getting the results out of. I don't know, we don't have the data yet. There are other roles that might not be providing the support that we need to repurpose and reposition. But I don't think that's the board's call. That's the local school councils and the principal's call. I think there could be value in reducing our areas if we go to models that other districts use that are much more about principal autonomy with accountability. It would be a big shift for our system, but there's potential cost savings there as well. These are conversations for our entire community to have, and again, that we need to trust our LSCs and principals to implement well.
All right, thank you all. We have another round of rapid fire yes or no questions having to do with the budget. I hope you'll indulge me. And then I have one last budget question when you'll get to talk a little bit more in detail about your position. But yes or no, and we'll do this one starting with Rosita. Do you support taking out a high interest loan to cover the district's operating costs?
Absolutely not.
Karen?
Absolutely not.
Robert?
No.
Have
Adam?
been from the beginning, no, that is not the way that we're gonna make things work.
And Che?
I don't know the terms of the loan, and I think it would be irresponsible to say what we support and don't support when we don't have the data on the information that's being presented.
Okay. The next question, again, yes or no. Do you think the city should pick up the portion of the cost of the non-teaching pensions for CPS?
No.
Karen?
I'm going to say yes, because it has always resided with the city, and it just got lobbed over to CPS under Lori Lightfoot's administration.
Robert?
I think it's important that, well, yes or no question, yes. I think it's important that everyone is involved in making a success for our school systems.
So yes, the city
Yes.
should pick up that cost. Adam?
In theory, we're going through a bureaucratic divorce, right? There's some renegotiation that we have to do because our finances have been embedded for a long time. So I don't think we can figure out how do we tease that out. I think 15 years of evidence of what effective has looked like and some things that have taken longer. So I'd say, look at where we are. How has it served us well?
Great,
I would
thank
say
you.
an elected school board.
A couple of questions having to do with school choice. And I'll give you a couple of minutes for those two, starting with Rosita. Do you think that the district should change some of its policies and practices around admitting students into selective enrollment and magnet programs? If yes,
Get the best quality of education.
Adam?
So diversity is our asset. It's our superpower as a city. Our problem right now is that we have a capacity-based system and not a need-based system. So what that means is there's a certain number of slots, and if you get it, you get it. And it doesn't matter if you could have been successful in that environment, if you wanted that additional challenge, too bad, so sad. And so what we need to do is make sure that we have a model that says, hey, all the kids, because we've got cut scores for these, right? We know when kids are able to be successful in these more rigorous environments. How do we make sure every kid who wants it and is ready has a spot? We can house extension programs in our neighborhood schools and make them stronger places. We can build collaborative relationships across schools and across teachers to ensure that there's that same level of quality. But until we start with needs versus a scarcity mindset about what we have, we're not going to do right by any of our kids. And that's whether we're talking about selective enrollment, that's whether we're talking about students with disabilities, that's whether we're talking about multilingual learners. All of our populations require us to be thinking much more intentionally about what their needs are and how do we build an ecosystem of schools that can do right by all kids so we're not telling people no and putting them on a path that is not the one that would have been rigorous for them.
Che?
Yeah, I'm with Adam on this. We have to begin by talking about what are the needs of the schools that are underperforming. Brooks is one of the top schools, not only in the city, in the nation, right in the heart of Roseland and Pullman. I want to see Phillips learn from the lessons of Dunbar and King, who turn themselves around. Dunbar is one of the best vocational schools in the city. So we give these false choices on which education is the best or what would we do to limit. You know, there are a lot of parents that fought hard, parents, teachers, stakeholders, that fought hard for selective enrollment schools, that fought hard for their magnet schools to have the prestige that they have, for the Whitney Youngs and the Kenwoods where your child goes. I don't want to see anything taken away. I want to see neighborhood schools, like Robert Jones said, brought up to equity. And I think that's the conversation we don't have. We have about what do we take away to give someone else something else. All of our schools should be world-class schools. And when I'm on the board, that's what I'm working toward, the future of our children.
Karen, the question was, would you change anything about how the district admits students into its selective enrollment and magnet programs, and why or why not?
So I'm the product of magnet schools, neighborhood schools, and a selective enrollment high school. I want to make sure that we create equal access for all of our children, whether it's children with special needs, whether it's children who are English language learners. We need to create opportunity for every single child to be met where they are. Ideally, we would have a neighborhood school where every kid, no matter academic capacity, would be able to go and have their needs met. That's not what we have now. I think we have to develop a system that ensures that we don't have a zero-sum game. To Che's point, you know, it's like we have to take away from you in order to give to you. why can't we have a space where everybody who has the academic aptitude and the desire to be pushed further can go to a school that is going to meet their needs? We need to create a system that is imbued with equity and ensures that every kid, no matter their level, can have a high caliber, top-notch quality education. So I think the process needs to be changed. We need to actually create more openings for magnet programs, more openings for selective enrollment, more openings that actually meet the desires of parents and their kids, because parents want more space. It is harder to get into Skinner's kindergarten class than it is to get into Harvard. That shouldn't be.
Thank you all for these responses. Karen, I'll go to you first with this next question. As you guys know, we've seen an influx of English learners in the school district, and some of them are attending schools that, by all accounts, are not well equipped to serve them, with few or no bilingual staff and programs. How would you address this issue in the short and long run to make sure that English learners are getting more and better services in CPS?
Sure. I come to this space as a bilingual Spanish language primary instruction teacher for 1st through 5th grade. So I taught Spanish speaking children to read and write in their native language in order to bridge them then into English. We do not have enough bilingual teachers within our schools, but we can leverage our paraprofessionals, we can leverage our parents in community, and we can leverage community-based organizations that have Spanish speakers to provide that support within the schools until we can actually recruit and or prepare additional folks to acquire the right endorsement and certification in order to be able to be bilingual instructors. This requires us to be innovative. It requires us to be creative in terms of solutions. If you look at the example of Logan Square Neighborhood Association, they brought in parents who were unemployed or wanted to volunteer, and they brought them into the school building and prepared them to basically be of support. They were able to provide stipends, they got grants and all sorts of additional funding and supports. So they leveraged the talent right there in the community to actually come in and support the children during school time. Many of those parents went on to become paraprofessionals themselves and went on to become teachers. So there's an ecosystem that exists that we need to leverage. And then there's us creating additional layers to that ecosystem for ourselves. So this just requires us to be innovative and to actually have the will to leverage the existing resources.
Thank you. Robert?
Innovation and creativity is going to be important as it relates to the welcoming city that we are, having the asylum seekers that we have in our cities and in our schools. We're going to have an all hands on deck as it relates to providing them meeting their needs. And that comes from partnerships and collaborations and making sure, of course, that the educational levels are appropriate and proper, and whatever certifications need to be done are done. But we need to make sure that we take seriously, if we talk about our love for the children, we need to show that love for the children by doing everything possible to make that a reality.
Adam?
So I'm a parent at a school that's lived this firsthand over the past 2 years. We are a predominantly black school on the south side that our Spanish-speaking population has exploded over the past 2 years. And what's so great about Chicago is our community stepped up for our new neighbors. So I'm on a WhatsApp chain with pictures, all of our new neighbors in Spanish, where when people say, I need a bed, I need this, how do I register for school? We've got folks interacting with them, meeting them where they are, making this happen, because parents make this city work, right? We hosted events that served a part of our city where you could guarantee a large portion of our kids would be refugees from war-torn parts of this country or parts of this world. So we never knew, but if there was conflict, a certain number of those kids were coming to our neighborhood. So what does that mean to build it in? How do you give those kids opportunities to be leaders within the school? When we had parent-teacher conferences, the fact that our kids were the ones who sat there and translated, because we had over 30 languages, that we had entire clubs built to it. So if we actually embrace the local strength, the local creativity, and empower as a board this sort of innovation and sharing of ideas, really good things can happen in the short term. In the long term, we need more bilingual teachers. We need to incentivize ESL teachers, and that's going to require us to work with the state. That's going to require us to work with our universities to make happen. It's something that I did at my school where we got everyone ESL endorsed by the time that I left there.
Thank you. Che?
Our new arrivals bring new opportunities. And the new opportunity is that our children in Black communities need to learn how to be bilingual. In Chicago, we speak global languages. The biggest languages in Chicago: Ukrainian, Polish, Mandarin, Arabic, Spanish. I'm not just talking about learning Spanish languages. Everyone needs to learn each other's language so we can all be prepared with a global outlook and a global education. When I was in grammar school, we used to do International Day. This has to begin in elementary school, and not just children. Teachers need to be getting professional development, not just bringing in new teachers, but the teacher pool we have needs professional bilingual development in elementary school, so that on International Day, we would bring different dishes and try different dishes from different people's cultures, play different music. You know, I was working at Fort Dearborn Elementary School, and they were telling me about all the new arrivals that came to their school, and in 2 years, those young people were speaking English, and the class cohort they already had, the Black children, were speaking Spanish. We need to know each other at an elementary level and use our new arrivals as a new opportunity, because judging by some of the low enrollment, our schools got plenty of space for it.
Rosita?
Yes, I agree with Che on that. I think that, first of all, I think that all children need to be bilingual. And I think that it's a great opportunity for children who are coming into our system, who are immigrants, to really learn English, but also for the children there to have that exposure. But one of the great things is that we already have systems in place to do exactly that. And I'm a graduate of Teachers for Chicago. When they didn't have teachers, they recruited, and we went to school for 2 years, and then we got a job, and they recruited us. And it was a great, fantastic opportunity. When they needed math and science teachers, they had a system paired with the University of Chicago called the Sesame program. And all we have to do is look at these programs. Well, I got my math and science certification from that when we didn't have science teachers. So if we don't have ESL teachers, all we have to do is create that pipeline with our teachers, and it incentivizes our teachers. It gives them more, you know, well, we got incentives because we were able to move up lanes and steps. But this is a great opportunity for our educators to learn how to speak Spanish or whatever language, and then get rewarded in terms of moving forward, in terms of how they are moving up lanes and steps with their professional career. So I think it's something that's already there.
Thank you all. Shifting gears here, a question about charter schools. The district in recent years has stepped up scrutiny of charter schools, often renewing their contracts for shorter terms, and in some cases, closing campuses such as urban prep. Would you be in favor of ending, in some cases, the district's agreement with charter schools, keeping in mind that that effectively leads to a school closure? Robert?
Well, first of all, I think it's important for us to understand that the fabric of our education within Chicago is going to consist of a number of different schools. And some of those different schools are charter schools. Charter schools exist in CPS, and that's a reality, and a reality we should face. We should make sure that they are doing the things that are proper as it relates to providing education. I am against closing any of those schools that are already open now, but I'm also against expanding any new ones. Okay, but I do believe that whether it's a charter school, they help enhance the fabric of the different types of education. We just have to make sure that they're giving our children the education that they need.
Adam?
So governance, regardless of your model, that we need to make sure that we are doing our job as a board, ensuring that all schools are excellent places for kids. And if we have indicators that they are not, we need to be putting in place the interventions and supports that will make sure that they are. Because it does not matter what school door you walk in this city, you should have an excellent classroom that will progress and make sure that you are college and career ready. I think part of our challenges, and that's district and charter schools, right? We've got places that are not cutting the mustard across the governance models. And we have work to do there. And so what that means is, in some places that's not just about learning, that's about adult culture and climate. Are the adults being treated well, or do they leave every 2 years and therefore that school can't thrive? Are the kids happy there? Are the parents happy there? Do they feel their kids are learning? And then what results do we have about academics? And so for me, this question is much more about how do we get into the weeds and have a much more nuanced understanding of how we're gathering evidence and holding our schools accountable to deliver on the results that we're asking of them.
Che?
So, yesterday, I just saw where Common expanded his charter school in our district, Art in Motion, and the mayor was there, and they were cutting the ribbon, and here you got a charter school, and you got the CTU mayor, and they're cutting the ribbon, and I was thinking to myself, the school itself is not the problem. The problem is the special interests of it all. When we have charter school people who are flooding our political candidates with money, bombs in our neighborhood to control policy, I find that to be problematic when what we're really facing is charter schools need to have certified teachers, not just anybody from anywhere. If they're going to be getting our public tax dollars, I want to make sure that the teachers in those schools are receiving the best education that they can get. I would like to see our charter schools have unionized workers to ensure that they're getting the best quality service. I want to see charter schools stop farming children, meaning if a child doesn't make a certain grade, because our tax dollars are paying for this, if a child doesn't make a certain grade point average in charter school, they get kicked out and now they have to deal with it at Harlan, or they have to deal with that at Phillips, and then that school is ranked as a lesser school. We need parity across the board when it comes to our relationship with charter and public. Sometimes what I see from charters is they take public funds, but they're not held to public standards.
Rosita?
Okay, I have an interesting story regarding charter schools. As a union member, I have worked for CTU and American Federation of Teachers, and I was out on a lot picketing, and we were fighting against charter schools. And then I went to the AFT convention, and I asked the question, what are you going to do to defend our union members? And they said, we're going to unionize charter schools. So that let me know that this really isn't about the children. It isn't even about the teachers. I believe in choice as a parent. And I had to learn that lesson. Why am I out here fighting? You know, if the charter school is better than the public school in my neighborhood, that's where my kid is going. So it can't be about, we need quality schools. If it's a charter school and it's working out, you mentioned urban prep, which really broke my heart when they closed urban prep. We so needed urban prep. And people didn't understand that. People from other cultures didn't understand the power of urban prep. Urban prep, the scores were 14%. And they were saying, we're sending kids to college, not the scores, the ACT scores were 14 and 15, average. Well, we know that that's not gonna make a successful college student. But what urban prep offered to the community was something that could not be recreated. So for me, it's about quality schools, whatever you call it. We have to look out for our children. They are our future. We can't be worried about whether the school is a public, a charter, or this or that. So we have to bring quality education to our neighborhoods.
Thank
you.
Karen?
So public schools are charter schools. Charter schools are public schools. They are part of the public system. And to Adam's point about governance, the distinction is the way in which they are operated. I believe that we need a variety of schools to meet the variety of needs that our kids have. So Art in Motion, Che took the words out of my mouth. Art in Motion opened yesterday. Their teachers are not necessarily unionized. The majority of charter schools in the city of Chicago are unionized. Noble Street isn't, and there's one or two others. But when I look at a Betty Shabazz and the culture of Afrocentrism and the opportunity for our kids to learn about themselves and to come out of that school with a sense of self that flies in the face of what society generally teaches our children about themselves. When I look at urban prep, I have a son who goes to Morehouse College. Urban prep is a phenomenal mirror of what happens in Morehouse around Black manhood. Look at Art in Motion, the exposure to art. Our charter schools actually get 75% of the funding of a traditional public school, and they actually are held to certain very stringent standards. And so I believe we need to have a variety of school options, a variety of school choice, but every single one of them needs to serve our children and serve them well. And if they don't perform well, then we have ways to decertify them and close those schools. I don't think anybody wants to see our schools closed, but we do need to make sure that all schools, regardless of their governance model, are held to the highest standards possible to ensure that our kids get everything that they are entitled to.
Okay, thank you all. Next up, I have a question for you all that's somewhere at the intersection of enrollment and facilities. As we mentioned, with the arrival of migrant families in the city, we've seen a modest uptick in enrollment the last couple of years. However, it has certainly not made up for some fairly dramatic decreases in enrollment over the past 10 years, which in some cases have resulted in school buildings that are serving a fraction of the students that they were designed to serve, which can make it challenging and certainly expensive to provide all of the programs and services that students at other schools receive. So my question for you is, how would you balance the district's current enrollment with its hundreds of buildings that it operates? And I'll start with Adam this time.
So this is a national trend, right? Like we're going to have fewer young people for the foreseeable future unless something significant culturally changes. And I think part of what we have to do is we have to build a school system for the 22nd century, which requires a different sort of education, and it requires a different learning environment for that to happen in. This is an opportunity for us to really think about what does deeper learning focused in mastery, creativity, and identity really look like for our kids, and how do we get creative about that? Because our best buildings, for the most part, aren't serving our kids well. They're still locked in this, let's put desks in a room, let's put 20 to 30 kids in it for this particular subject, and it causes a dropout rate that should embarrass us each and every day. We've got buildings where the tiles fall off on our kids. That's happened to mine. We have radiators that explode and a kid halfway through the year can't use their classroom. We have huge issues around our buildings, around our budget, and around how we design education. The good news is I think those are the three challenges that can be solved in the same way. By reimagining what school looks like, bringing community together to say, what does it look like to educate our young people well? If we took everything aside and said, if we had to rebuild from the ground up, what would it be? And let's build those schools. Let's build those environments that probably have more flexible walls, that have more relationships with businesses and internships, that have more community partnerships in the arts coming into our buildings, right? We don't have to be arrogant and think that we have to have all the solutions and all the resources. This is Chicago. There is brilliance on every street, on every block. And what we haven't done is invited people to be part of figuring it out together and with our young people.
Che?
Oh man, that's very passionate. I agree with Adam. We have to have creative solutions to common problems, and we have to have a modern version of school and education. This is why I agree with the SCS schools in principle of what they are. I mean, schools have to be resource centers for communities. 6 out of every 10 of our property tax dollars are going to the schools. So why don't we have veteran programs, family resource programs? Why don't our buildings look like campuses that the community can use for resources, theater, arts, these type of things that I've been working in the community and in our schools to help develop. I believe that we have an opportunity with this space and these buildings to bring in collaborations. We talked about strategic corporate collaborations, artistic collaborations. These are all things that we can do because not only does the student need help, the family needs help, and we have the facilities to build out our community and include the community and how we build it with our schools.
Rosita?
If we're talking about underutilized buildings and what we're going to do with them, I was co-chair of the South Shore Community Action Council for about 8 years. And our plan was to take the empty building at South Shore, and Barbara Bird Bennett promised that we would have that as a community hub. That didn't happen. The next thing we knew, it was a police station after she left. But I'm saying that to say, as we re-envision what schools are going to look like, they are not going to look like the schools that we grew up in. As Adam was saying, we have to reimagine. I remember being in a professional development in 2003, and our principal said, draw a picture of what schools are going to look like in the future. And I drew the computer, and I drew automated education. And I know that that's the direction we're going in. So since we know that we're moving in that direction, then we need to prepare for that. We have to prepare our students. They have to be used to technology because that is the direction we are going in. The underutilized buildings, they're going to be history. And unless we turn them into community hubs, like we say, and there's a lot of use for them, but they're not going to be schools. And we have to realize that they may be used for other purposes. So we just have to be very, imaginative and see what are we going to do with these empty buildings and how we're going to make them work for our community.
Thank you. Karen, we'll go to you next.
Sure. So to kind of echo some of what you've already heard, when I first was appointed to lead workforce development for the city of Chicago and Cook County, I wrote a white paper that I gave to Rahm Emanuel that envisioned our underutilized buildings and those defunct schools that had been closed down as spaces for community and for learning and for integrated intergenerational activity and engagement. Through my work with Thrive Chicago, we created youth hubs, and we actually went out and explored some of the old sort of mothballed schools to figure out how could we use those as spaces where young people could come in, use them as workforce development centers so young people could get additional training. Could we bring in artistic studios so that they could work on podcasts or anything artistic that would be able to just convert that space. And so, I think we're all of the same mind that this really requires some intentionality. It requires creativity, but it's also going to require funding. If the more creative we can be, the more likely we are to snag a Gates Foundation or a Ballmer or a Chan Zuckerberg to invest in sort of redesigning and reimagining how we utilize space that still houses a school, but also can be really creatively used by community. There are community-based organizations that are looking for space that could co-locate and be providing services to children and their families. We have to reimagine how we can leverage that space for the benefit of our kids and our families and really ensure that we have thriving communities and thriving centers within our community.
Thank you. Robert?
Yes, it pretty much is one truth when it comes to the reality of what we're talking about here, building utilization. We have to look at the matrix that deals with building utilization, and we have to make sure that we open it up and reimagine a way in which we can utilize the facilities that are being underutilized. That becomes important. They're there. The utilities are on. They're up and running. They just don't have as much things going on in them, as particularly our students, as they should. I think that we should collaborate with community organizations, agencies, and make absolutely sure that we make those buildings utilized fully in those communities and not shut them down.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to talk a little bit about District 10. It's one of the city's largest and most socioeconomically diverse, and it also really, I think, captures the reality that a couple of you touched on of schools nearby that are really high performing and desirable programs, and others that might be struggling, not that far away. There's been a lot of discussion about equity and improving equity in the district in recent years. What are some really specific and concrete steps that you think the board and the district can take to get there faster? And Che, we'll start with you this time.
To get to equity for the schools?
And to address this fairly wide disparity between what the student experience is like in different buildings, not only across the district, but also just within a school board district like District 10.
I'm gonna give you a little rap. Everybody's talking about imagination, but I'm the only artist with experience in creation. And I will say we have to create with the LSCs and the stakeholders that are already there, the goals for those schools that need to be brought up to equity. We have to work with the LSCs. They are the visionaries for the schools. They know the particular needs of every school, of the school that they're in lead of. The problem that we have is many LSCs in our district, well, some LSCs in our district don't even have enough people to make a quorum. Don't even have the training that they need to really understand how to create a goal, and not at best have had a formal relationship, and at worst, an antagonistic relationship with the board. So how can you have an effective school if they don't have an effective relationship with the board? When I am elected to the school board, I am going to know every LSC in our area, every underserved school, and I'm gonna sit there first and make goals and plans for what that particular school needs until we get it up to where it needs to be.
Rosita?
I think I wanna say this to Che. I don't think he's Googled my name, like I tell everybody, because he would find out that he's not the only musician, and I am a songwriter. I have 25 copyrights. I was a music teacher,
work together
and
yet?
I'm a member of ASCAP.
Well, stop hating on me on the internet, and then we can do something together. Let's make some.
We will. So I just want to say that I've had violin ensembles, I've written grants for that. But one of the things that we talk about is the most thing when we talk about having equity. Now, when I was co-chair of the South Shore Community Action Council, one of the things we decided to do, we needed to infuse our community with something that we hadn't seen. That is additional help. So we wrote grants, we got $2 million. We implemented our program at Chicago Vocational High School, which is one of the lower performing schools. When we had the program, I ran the program, and we recruited children that everybody said would never go to college. Well, they went to college, and some of them are graduating. We have to have these kind of programs. We need the investment. We tried to get funding for all of our schools in South Shore so that we could go ahead, and I'm hoping that that's what we're gonna do, so we could go ahead and help promote education for our students who want this. People would say, oh, that kid isn't going to college. To me, what are you wasting your time for? But guess what? I just got him a scholarship. He's going to the RISE program. So those are the kind of things we need to do to equalize education in lower performing schools. And these programs are so important in these schools. The students love it. And we need to bring more of that as board members and understand the value of this and the life-changing value for our students.
Thank you. Karen?
Chicago State University, which is housed right here in the 10th District, has had responsibility over the past year or two through the Illinois State Board of Higher Education to focus on two things: workforce equity and educational equity. And so I look at the work of Jeffrey Canada in creating the Harlem Children's Zone. We can create a similar space within the 10th District. Woodlawn community actually borrowed from the Harlem Children's Zone concept and created the Woodlawn Children's Promise. They brought the schools together, the principals, the LSCs, all of the community-based organizations, and essentially created like a quality of life plan, essentially a quality of education plan for the community. And they had community-based organizations take ownership over certain aspects of implementation of that plan. They had schools buy into the plan. They had parents buy into the plan. They had students buy into the plan. We need to take that Harlem Children's Zone model. We need to align ourselves with Chicago State University, University of Chicago, Roosevelt University, Olive Harvey, our community college system, and really build out a concrete plan that aligns with the Black Student Success Commission and the Black Student Success Plan, and bring those together in combination and focus very intensely and intentionally on elevating the schools. We have one of the highest Black populations of the district at 72%, and we have the highest number of low performing schools. So we have to turn that around, but we do that through collaboration, through partnership with higher education, and through intentionality and partnership with our teachers, our principals, our students, our LSCs, and map out a game plan for our kids and for their future.
Robert?
Yes, we have to make sure we have the foundational building blocks to make this happen. And I'm not even talking about before we go into looking at what we don't have in the budget or what we need to see what we have economically as it relates to this. But we know that we need the voice of the community needs to be heard as it relates to what it is that the children need in their schools. And we need to develop those collaborations with all of the things that exist around us to make those things happen in our schools. We can do that. It exists, and we have to be willing to really put the children first, like we say, and mean what we say, and go about doing it and building those collaborations.
Thank you. Adam?
So we're already going to have a hard time getting in, but that we are trusting the entire city, that is going to help, right? You can shine a light on things like kids are not doing well here, that $2 billion is owed in infrastructure here on the south side, that we do have, as Karen said, the lowest performing schools in our district, right? Those are things that we can rally around. The next thing that we have to do is we need to build truly inclusive visions for our school that have actually tapped into each and every neighborhood as we design what that looks like. Where are we trying to go? What does it look like, sound like, and feel like when our schools meet the needs of each and every single kid? And then how do we tie that to a strategy? Our current strategic plan and the Black Student Success Plan are starts, but they are fundamentally insufficient because they are not specific enough in terms of what does it look like when these things actually happen. And so we need to engage folks who know this stuff best, the Jeffrey Canadas of the world, to actually put some meat on those bones. And then our job as a board is to not give up. Our job is to be the folks who every 3 months say, we said these were the 5 indicators that we're looking for, how's it going? All right, success here, let's celebrate the heck out of it. But on these 2, it ain't happening yet. What's your plan? And if we got leadership on the management side who can't deliver on that plan, it's time for new leadership. But if they are growing and learning along with us, then we need to support them and champion their efforts because no city has figured this out yet. We are the fastest growing city in terms of performance since COVID. We were the national trendsetters back when I was a principal. So we're doing better than everybody else, and we all know it ain't enough. So that is our job as a board: transparency, strategy and vision, and progress monitoring.
Thank you. I have one final question for you, and I'll just give you 20 seconds for this one. And you might feel like I'm putting you on the spot a little bit. And I'll start with you, Rosita. If you weren't running for school board, which of your opponents here tonight would you support?
Wow, it's hard to say. They're all so good.
That's a good problem to have.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure.
It really is hard to say. I like all of these people. I wish they could all be on the board. I think that we would have a much better board. They're passionate, and they're well informed. So it's just too hard for me to make that decision.
Thanks. What would you say, Karen?
I would say Adam. I think he's got character and integrity. He's got significant experience, and I like the funky T-shirts with the blazers. I mean, he's a good dude, and we have a lot of shared experience and shared passions. So
Thank you,
Adam.
Karen. Robert, how about you?
Adam, regardless of how you tax me.
Adam?
So I got into this race because I wanted a parent. I wanted to be able to vote for somebody who knows how learning happens, and I wanted somebody who's done the work at scale. And ideally somebody who was not running for just any office, but wanted this office. I didn't have anybody that met all those. I couldn't get any of my friends to run, so I'm sitting up here because that's what we need. I think that's what we need. So when I think about those pieces, somebody who's a parent, somebody who has done this sort of work at scale, I think Karen meets the most of those criteria there.
Thank you. And Che?
I would support Rosita. And it's because Rosita represents what our community looks like. She comes from the community. And Rosita is not funded by billionaire backers from out of the state. And she's not funded by special interests. It's because Rosita is we're from the same community. We've worked in the same places, and I've seen her face. I haven't seen any of these other candidates in the community like Rosita, and she hasn't taken big money. So it's because we need a real elected school board. I would only go for a community candidate.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. I really appreciate that. I know it's been a really busy few months for all of you, so thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us for this conversation with the candidates in District 10. You can find our voter guides and additional resources at chalkbeat.org/Chicago. And we thank our partners at WBEZ, the Chicago Sun-Times, and Block Club Chicago for working with us to develop these resources. Special thanks to Tiona Van Gundy at Field Events for planning and hosting these forums, and to BPM Film Company for the video and audio production. Also thanks to our engagement team at Chalkbeat and to the team at Chalkbeat Chicago. Our managing editors are Eric Gorski and Kerry Malago. Our editor-in-chief is Sarah Darville. For Chalkbeat Chicago, I'm Mila Kumpalova. Have a great day and happy voting.
Thank you.